a man pours water into a cup and holds it out to the man next to him. They are in a trench under the Russian forts at Port Arthur, and it is the night before an assault. There is no sake and no wine. There is water. Each one drinks and passes it along. What they say when they take it is a set phrase, and every man saying it means it. Farewell. I have no other words to say to you. I have decided to leave my body on tomorrow's battlefield. Please take this water cup of long separation. And then, of the same water, this evening our water tastes like golden nectar. One of the men who drank from that cup lived. He was an infantry lieutenant in the Japanese Third Army. By the end of the following day, his right hand was gone as a working thing, and he had 8 wounds in him. 2 years later, he published a book about it, The Tunnel of Corpses. The apology he made to a dead man for standing on his chest. The water. It is the most unsparing thing any soldier wrote about that siege, and the army made it a bestseller. 40,000 copies inside a year, with something in the front of it in the handwriting of the general who ordered the assault. And then he spends the next 40 years of his life writing over it. His name was Tadayoshi Sakurai. The cover of the book gives his rank as Army Infantry First Lieutenant, and it credits him twice, once for writing it, and once for drawing the pictures in it. The war was Russia's and Japan's, and the prize was a harbor, Port Arthur. The Russian Pacific Fleet sheltering inside it, and a ring of forts and trenches thrown around the whole thing. Before any of that, there was a word. His book opens on it, reading, "Mobilization." How sweetly the word gladdened our hearts. How impatiently we waited to be ordered to the front. That is a young officer, and there is nothing arch about it. He wanted to go. Everyone around him wanted to go. The man who would send them was General Nogi Maresuke. Nogi had his own history with disgrace. 27 years earlier, in a rebellion at home, his regiment lost its colors. A flag handed to it by the emperor himself. What happened to him after that is a mystery. Some say he was sentenced to death and then pardoned. Another has him asking permission to kill himself and being refused by the emperor in person. Whichever it was, 27 years before Port Arthur, Nogi already believed there were things a man should not outlive. He brought 2 sons with him to this war. The siege opened in August and did not end until January. Nogi's method was the frontal assault. Men went up into prepared fire, in daylight and in darkness, 3 general assaults across 4 months against works built to stop exactly that. One attempt in September on a position the maps called 203-meter hill cost 2,500 casualties in 3 days and did not take it. The official Japanese figure for the siege was 57,780 men killed, wounded, and missing. Around 14,000 of them dead. And 25,000 more were carried out of it without a Russian ever touching them. The Third Army went into that siege 80,000 strong. Close to a third of it left sick with beriberi, which is what happens to a body fed on polished white rice. The milling takes the husk off, and the husk is where the thiamine is. Feed men white rice and nothing else for long enough, and their hearts fail, and their legs stop working. The Japanese Navy had already solved this. 20 years before Port Arthur, a naval surgeon put barley into the rice ration, and naval beriberi fell to under 1%, then to nothing at all. The army refused the barley. The ration changed that spring, after the siege was over. So this is the ground Sakurai went up, It was an infernal tunnel of the dead and dying, he said. We groped to the right not to step on a dead comrade, only to kick a wounded one on the left. Don't step on the corpses, I shouted to my men. But at that very moment, I was treading on the chest of one. Pardon was the only apology I could offer the dead thus unintentionally insulted. It is August, and the assault is going in at a place called Bodai. Sakurai is somewhere in the first wave of it. The fire comes down on them in the open, and he is hit. And he goes down. He cannot use his right hand. He has 8 wounds in him. He is not able to stand, and he is not able to crawl. The assault moves past him, or dies around him. Either way, it leaves him where he is, on his back, in the open, among men who are dead and men who are still dying. Then the Russians come down, through the wounded, to finish what the guns started. They have their bayonets fixed. They are coming at a run. He shuts his eyes. 5 or 6 Japanese survivors reach the Russians before the Russians reach him. There is a fight going on above his closed eyes, and he cannot see any of it. All 5 or 6 of them are killed. And then somebody gets a hold of him and lifts. 8 wounds. A right hand that does not work. 5 or 6 men dead on that spot inside the last minute, keeping the bayonets off a man who had already shut his eyes for it. It is Takesaburo Kondo, and he carries Sakurai out of Bodai to safety. A hero. A man who deserves to be celebrated. Somewhere in the weeks after that, lying still, Sakurai worked out what he now thought was true about his own life, writing, "My present life is not mine at all. Ode." And he named the man it was owed to, by name. Takesaburo Kondo. Less than a month later, Kondo was killed. Sakurai had a long convalescence, and in it he wrote the book. He wrote it left-handed. His right hand had been shot away at Bodai, so he wrote it with the one the Russians left him. That is, in the front of the book itself, in an introduction signed by the former Prime Minister of Japan. The Prime Minister. That is, whose name is on the front of a wounded lieutenant's memoir. He wrote that Sakurai had set down the facts of the siege with the left hand spared him by the enemy's shot. He also says what he thinks the book is for. He describes its purpose as making clear the true cause of the unbroken series of successes granted to the Imperial Army. The Japanese edition came out that year under the title Nikudan, Flesh and Bullet. Bound into the front of it, a poem, handwritten in English, dedicating the book to General Nogi's 2 sons. One died at Kinchau in May. One on 203-meter hill in December. 7 months apart, in 2 different battles, in the campaign their father was commanding. The exact things Nogi believed a man should not outlive. And then there is page 6. It is not text. It is not a preface, and it is not a dedication from the publisher. It is brushwork. 2 characters, put on the page by hand, large, in ink, taking up most of the sheet. The 2 characters mean something close to valiant. Beside them, there is a line, and the line is a gift inscription. It reads, "Presented to Lieutenant Sakurai." And under that, the name of the man who sent it. Maresuke. Nogi. The general who ordered the assault that left him on the ground at Bodai. In the front of the book, Sakurai wrote about being left there. It sold about 40,000 copies in Japan inside the first year. The next year, it came out in English. The title, Nikudan, translated to mean human bullets. Human bullets. The English edition has an editor's preface on the front of it, saying plainly what it hopes the book will do. Much is being said just now about the Japanese as a war-loving nation, likely to become aggressors in the struggle for the control of the Pacific. This little book of Lieutenant Sakurai's will, perhaps, help to set us right in regard to the spirit in which the Japanese soldier fights. The editor was wrong about nearly all of it. And his own book does not end in doubt. It ends like this. The war is now over. The storm has ceased. The blood of brave warriors has bought this peace. Their names shall be fragrant for 1,000 years, and lighten 10,000 ages. The tunnel of the dead and the 1,000 fragrant years are in the same book, same hand, same year. He was not sneaking the horror past anybody. The horror is the argument. A victory that costs 57,000 men and is still worth having is a far better story than a cheap one. It needs the corpses in the tunnel. The army did not tolerate that book. It wanted it. And it kept him. He stayed in uniform. By the middle of the 1920s, he was running the Army Ministry's press section, the office the Army had set up a few years earlier to handle what the public at home was told. He retired a major general around 1930. Then, through the 1930s, while Japan was arming and expanding, he kept writing biographies of the Army's generals. One of them is a life of Nogi Maresuke. Some 20 years earlier, on the day of the Emperor Meiji's funeral, Nogi and his wife killed themselves. Japan took it as an old soldier following his lord into death, and as atonement for the 57,000, for the 2 sons. The note he left behind does not say that. What it names is the rebellion, 35 years earlier. The lost colors. The disgrace he had been carrying the whole time. So the story that grew up around Nogi's death, the general undone by grief for his men, is not what the man himself said he was doing. And the shelf of hero lives Sakurai was writing in the 1930s has a life of Nogi on it. He never said a word against any of it. From the book to the day the Americans barred him from public life is 41 years. He spent them in the business of what the country was told. The press office, the generals' lives, the version of Nogi that everybody already wanted. The occupation authorities purged him for his activities during the war. He was let back in 5 years later. He lived until 1965. He never took any of it back. He wrote the truest sentences anybody wrote about that siege. The tunnel, the apology to the corpse, the cup of water going hand to hand the night before. And he wrote them believing every word of the fragrant 1,000 years. And he went on believing it into an office whose whole job was what the country was told. One man wrote The Tunnel of the Dead. The same man wrote The Fragrant 1,000 Years. He never had to choose between them.